Andrés Escobar. Andrés Escobar's death became one of the darkest chapters ever connected to a World Cup. In 1994, Colombia arrived at the World Cup in the United States as one of the tournament's outsiders. Escobar, 27 years old, was a composed and respected defender, known for his calm presence and clean style of play. On June 22, 1994, Colombia faced the United States in a crucial group match. A low cross was driven into the box, and Escobar stretched to clear it for a corner. Instead, the ball deflected off his foot and slipped past his goalkeeper for an own goal. The United States won 2-1. Colombia was eliminated earlier than expected. Escobar returned to Medellin shortly after the tournament. On July 2, 1994, he left a bar in the suburbs of the city. In the parking lot, an argument broke out. Moments later, he was shot multiple times. Reports state the attacker shouted "goal" after each shot. Escobar died at the scene. Humberto Muñoz Castro was arrested and later sentenced to 43 years in prison, a sentence that was reduced. He was released in 2005 after serving around a decade. Investigators never fully clarified whether the killing was an isolated act of anger or connected to gambling and criminal networks that had lost money on Colombia's elimination. More than 100,000 people attended Escobar's funeral. His death forced a reckoning in Colombian football, turning a tragic mistake on the field into a symbol of how far violence had penetrated the sport. Chapecoense. Chapecoense's tragedy was not the death of one player, but of nearly an entire team on the verge of the biggest match in its history. In November 2016, the Brazilian club Associação Chapecoense de Futebol was traveling to Medellin, Colombia, to play the first leg of the Copa Sudamericana final against Atlético Nacional. For a club of Chapecoense's size, reaching a continental final was unprecedented. The journey itself symbolized a historic moment. On November 28, 2016, the team boarded La Mia Flight 2933 from Santa Cruz de la Sierra, Bolivia, heading toward Medellin. As the aircraft approached José María Córdoba International Airport late at night, the crew reported electrical failures and fuel shortages. Shortly after, the plane lost power and crashed into a mountainside near La Unión. There was no explosion on impact, but the damage was catastrophic. Of the 77 people on board, 71 were killed. Among the dead were players, coaching staff, club officials, journalists, and crew members. Only 6 people survived. Investigations later determined that the aircraft had run out of fuel before landing. Reports concluded that the flight plan had been calculated at the limit of the plane's maximum range, leaving no margin for delays or diversions. When holding patterns were required before landing, the aircraft exhausted its fuel supply. The crash devastated Brazilian football and sent shockwaves across the global sports community. Atlético Nacional formally requested that Chapecoense be awarded the Copa Sudamericana title in recognition of the tragedy. CONMEBOL granted the request. Chapecoense was forced to rebuild almost from nothing. The disaster became one of the deadliest aviation tragedies ever connected to professional football, marking a moment when a sporting celebration turned into international mourning within hours. José Luis Cuciuffo. José Luis Cuciuffo was a World Cup champion whose life ended in a sudden accident far from any stadium. Cuciuffo had been part of Argentina's 1986 World Cup winning squad under Diego Maradona. A strong and disciplined defender, he played a key role in that historic tournament in Mexico, helping Argentina lift the trophy. On December 11, 2004, Cuciuffo was on a hunting trip in Bahia San Blas in the province of Buenos Aires. He was traveling in a pickup truck with a friend carrying a shotgun. According to police reports, the weapon discharged accidentally while it was positioned between his legs inside the vehicle. The shot struck him in the abdominal area, causing severe internal damage. He was rushed toward the hospital in Carmen de Patagones, but he died during the transfer. He was 43 years old. The accident shocked the Argentine football community. Former teammates from the 1986 squad attended his funeral, remembering him as a loyal teammate and respected professional. Cuciuffo became the first member of that World Cup winning team to pass away, a reminder that even legends of the game can be lost in the most unexpected circumstances. Jean-Pierre Adams. Jean-Pierre Adams' story is one of the longest and most haunting tragedies ever linked to a World Cup player. Adams represented France at the 1978 World Cup and formed a solid defensive partnership at international level. By the early 1980s, his playing career was winding down. In March 1982, he was scheduled to undergo routine knee surgery in Lyon after suffering a tendon injury. The procedure was not considered urgent. On the day of the operation, hospital staff were on strike. The anesthetist responsible for Adams was reportedly handling multiple patients at once, and a trainee was assigned to monitor him. During the operation, Adams was improperly intubated. The tube blocked airflow instead of ventilating his lungs. He was deprived of oxygen, went into cardiac arrest, and suffered severe brain damage. He never regained consciousness. After months in the hospital, his wife Bernadette chose to bring him home and care for him herself. For nearly 4 decades, Adams remained in a persistent vegetative state. He could not speak, move voluntarily, or interact. His condition became one of the most extreme cases of long-term medical coma in modern sports history. Legal proceedings eventually found members of the medical team guilty of involuntary injury, but the sentences were minimal compared to the consequences. Jean-Pierre Adams remained in that condition until September 6, 2021, when he died from a pulmonary infection at the age of 73. For 39 years, his life stood still because of a surgical error. His case reshaped discussions around medical accountability and athlete care long after his playing days were over. Gaetano Scirea. Gaetano Scirea was a World Cup champion whose life ended not in controversy, but in a sudden and violent accident. Scirea captained Italy to victory at the 1982 World Cup and was widely respected for his intelligence, composure, and sportsmanship. Remarkably, throughout his professional career, he never received a red card. After retiring in 1988, he became an assistant coach at Juventus, working closely with Dino Zoff. On September 3, 1989, Scirea was in Poland on a scouting mission. He had been sent to observe Górnik Zabrze, a future opponent of Juventus in the UEFA Cup. While traveling near the village of Babsk in a Fiat 125P, the car collided head-on with a van after reportedly entering the opposite lane. In the trunk were 4 cans of gasoline, commonly carried at the time due to fuel shortages. The impact caused the fuel to ignite, and the vehicle quickly burst into flames. Of the 4 people inside the car, only one survived. Scirea and 2 others died at the scene. He was 36 years old. News of his death reached Italy later that evening. The announcement during a live sports broadcast left studio guests in tears, including former teammate Marco Tardelli. The shock was immediate and nationwide. Christian Atsu. Christian Atsu's death came not on a football pitch, but in the aftermath of a natural disaster that shocked the world. Atsu represented Ghana at the 2014 World Cup in Brazil and became known for his speed and direct attacking style. Over the years, he played in the Premier League and across Europe before joining Hatayspor in Turkey. On February 6, 2023, a massive earthquake struck southern Turkey and northern Syria. Entire buildings collapsed within seconds. Atsu was inside a residential complex in Antakya when the structure gave way during the early morning hours. Initial reports suggested he had been rescued, but those claims were later corrected. Rescue teams searched the rubble for days under freezing conditions. Nearly 2 weeks later, his body was recovered from the debris. He was 31 years old. The earthquake claimed tens of thousands of lives, but Atsu's death resonated deeply within the football world because he had represented his country on the sport's biggest stage. Ghana declared national mourning, and tributes came from former teammates, clubs, and international federations. His death underscored how quickly life can shift from stadium lights to catastrophe beyond the game. Daniel Jarque. Daniel Jarque never played in a World Cup, but his name became permanently linked to one of its most iconic moments. Jarque was the captain of Espanyol and one of Spain's promising defenders. In August 2009, during a preseason training camp at Coverciano in Italy, he was found unresponsive in his hotel room. Medical reports later determined that he had suffered a heart attack. He was 26 years old. His death stunned Spanish football. Teammates described him as fit, disciplined, and in peak condition. There had been no public indication of serious health problems. Nearly a year later, on July 11, 2010, Spain faced the Netherlands in the World Cup final. In extra time, Andrés Iniesta scored the winning goal that secured Spain's first World Cup title. After scoring, Iniesta removed his jersey to reveal a shirt underneath reading, "Dani Jarque, siempre con nosotros." The tribute was seen worldwide. For millions watching, Jarque's name was spoken again at the very center of football's biggest stage. Samuel Okwaraji. Samuel Okwaraji died in the middle of a World Cup qualifying match in front of tens of thousands of fans. Okwaraji was a midfielder for Nigeria and had also studied law in Europe before returning to represent his national team. On August 12, 1989, Nigeria faced Angola in a crucial 1990 World Cup qualifier at the Lagos National Stadium. More than 100,000 supporters filled the stands as Nigeria pushed for a result. The match was tense and physically demanding. With roughly 10 minutes remaining, Okwaraji was near the halfway line when his movements slowed. Witnesses said he staggered briefly before collapsing face-first onto the pitch. There had been no heavy challenge or visible contact. The referee stopped play immediately as teammates signaled for medical assistance. Doctors and paramedics rushed onto the field and began CPR while the stadium fell silent. Despite emergency efforts, he showed no signs of recovery. He was pronounced dead shortly afterward. He was 25 years old. An autopsy later revealed hypertrophic cardiomyopathy combined with high blood pressure, a heart condition that can go undetected even in professional athletes. His death led to increased attention on cardiac screening for players in Nigeria and beyond, highlighting the hidden risks that can exist even at the highest level of competition. Marc-Vivien Foé. Marc-Vivien Foé collapsed during an international tournament match in a moment witnessed live by millions. On June 26, 2003, Cameroon faced Colombia in the semi-final of the FIFA Confederations Cup at the Stade de Gerland in Lyon. Foé, a 28-year-old midfielder, had been covering large areas of the pitch throughout the game. In the 72nd minute, away from immediate pressure and far from the ball, he suddenly fell to the ground near the center circle. At first, players looked confused. Then the seriousness became clear. Colombian players were among the first to reach him before medical staff ran onto the field. He appeared unconscious and resuscitation efforts began immediately. He was carried to the stadium's medical unit where doctors continued attempts to revive him for nearly 45 minutes. He could not be saved. An autopsy later determined that Foé had suffered a cardiac arrest linked to an undiagnosed congenital heart condition, specifically hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Reports later revealed that he had mentioned feeling unwell earlier in the match, but chose to continue playing. Cameroon's players were devastated. There were discussions about whether to withdraw from the final, but after consultation with his family, they chose to play in his honor. His death intensified global awareness of cardiac risks in professional football and accelerated calls for improved medical screening and emergency response protocols during matches. And that brings us to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like and help boost the video. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. See you soon. Bye.